Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
There's so many things to talk about. And of course, we've got
Absolutely.
the amazing view behind you as well. So before we get started, let's give our listeners where they can find you on the interwebs and how they can find your book.
Well, Jim and Melanie, thank you so much for having me. And
Mhm.
I'm delighted to be here with you. And you can find me on michelleslater.com, on my Instagram account, Michelle B. Slater. I also have a TikTok account with the same name. And you can order the book. It's available anywhere that books are sold. And there you go.
We will have all of those links on our website, counterculturewise.com, as well as the live video and audio version of the interview.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, let's get right on into it. I know Jim's been bursting with questions. We've been sitting on this for a week or two. So,
well, I wanted to say firstly that you hold a PhD in French literature from Johns Hopkins University. That is no small feat. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. So I really enjoyed your book. I want to say that right from the get-go. It opened my eyes and my mind to some things that I was only maybe just on the surface aware of. It get right to the beginning. It sets the stage for the main story at the beginning of the book. You lost your mother and your beloved German Shepherd Joy within a very short period of time of each other. So
it's a great name for a German Shepherd. Usually they go for something a little bit more strict sounding.
Yeah,
I love that you named
I grew
it
up
Joy.
with one named Fritz.
Yeah, see, that's more like it.
So the obvious, the stereotype,
Yeah.
Otto or whatever.
Well, she brought a lot of joy to our family, and that was, how my mother wanted to name her. So it was very appropriate.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I love your story about how you wanted a puppy and went about that. So really sweet. Folks are going to have to buy the books. I'm not going to give too much away because you want to immerse yourself in it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's a good read. So enter our friend Brady, is named after Tom Brady, the football player. I'm a Seahawks fan, so I'm not going to hold it against you. But it was
still the GOAT though. You got to hand it to him.
He's an amazing player.
Yeah.
Amazing player. So tell us what that was like meeting this soon-to-be soulmate dog.
It was a supernatural experience, as I think I put it in Soulmate Dog, that I really felt like I fell in love with this puppy at first sight. And I'm very reserved. I'm very skeptical. I don't go giving my heart away easily. And this puppy and I had a bonding experience without even really knowing who the other was. And so I was so convinced that this was the one dog, and it was just like that. And from that moment on, I made a commitment to Brady to care for him as I would for myself, and to spend time with him and be with him and get to know him. And he became this central figure in my life, and then I wanted to know more and more and more about him, and that's what led me on this journey in Soulmate Dog.
It is quite a journey. It wasn't without its bumps and bruises on the way, though. You speak of an experience with Schutzhund breeders. I'm using the quoting mark fingers for a reason. It took a bit out of the boy, but he came back around, which was good.
He did. That remains to be a top regret of my life, was sending him to that training. I didn't understand what it entailed, and I'm very grateful that he was able to come back from that PTSD that he came home with. But it was an informative experience, and it really ultimately led me to my greater understanding of what his capacities were.
Right. I think we underestimate our pets in general. Even if we don't have that kind of spiritual bond, it can be I think we limit our pets, in a lot of ways. Just for those of you who aren't familiar with this type of training, she, I'll just give a brief synopsis. I don't want to blow the book, but you had a suspicion that things weren't going quite the way they were supposed to. So you arrived early to pick the dog up and experienced one of the trainers being very abusive towards the dog, yelling at it, beating it, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely 180 degrees from what you were trying to accomplish.
You accidentally sent your dog to military school.
Exactly.
Or the equivalent.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's actually still painful to hear you recount that.
I'm sure it is. I'm sorry, but it's important.
And I would encourage your listeners to research any training programs a bit better than I did. I was convinced that it was going to enhance his natural abilities and that it would be a challenge for him, even an athletic challenge. And he was so smart as our German Shepherds, and so I thought that it would be an intellectual challenge for him, if you will. But I did experience quite a shock to see what the conditions were, and that I never gave him anything but unconditional love, and that was the sphere he had been raised in. And I'm anti-violence all the way. So yes, that was, we absolutely had many bumps along the way.
Yeah.
No
well,
doubt.
And then there's overcoming. I'm sure there was a sense of guilt too, because you didn't know. And then when you found out, I mean, I would have taken that very personally, even though it, wasn't your fault. You weren't the one doing it to him, but you still, I can kind of tell just by your eyes that there's still a little bit of guilt there. And man, I can't say that I wouldn't have retaliated. I can't say that I would have behaved myself in that situation. So
I just cared about rescuing that, and I would want others to know about it. So I would just caution people before they undertook
absolutely
a training program to really research what that entails. Other than that, it's mostly pain. It's not guilt anymore. It's just
good.
The pain that he went through, and that's all that remains, really.
But you fixed it. You fixed it. So that's the good thing.
The bond got stronger than ever.
Yeah. And he probably forever saw you as his rescuer. He probably did not make any connection at all other than mom's here to get me.
Oh no, I know he didn't. And that, I mean, that's the beauty of unconditional love, is that it's accompanied by unconditional forgiveness. And then we went back and we went into unconditional love therapy to try to treat the PTSD, and it really did work. I was relieved 1,000 times over to see him get his smile back and his confidence.
Smile. That's cute.
Yeah,
his smile.
Wonderful. But then a couple more things started happening happened that actually had you thinking a little bit stronger about the bond between we humans and animals. It's whether it be our pets, it could just be other animals you see. Dog got a stomach bloat, and then you lost the dog. You could talk a little bit more about that.
Yes. So when I was teaching at the University of Wisconsin, I was aware of what stomach bloat was in barrel-chested dogs, and they could come on quite quickly. But when you're in it, it came on very quickly. That we were just home one night. It was starting to snow, and he started acting very strangely and licking the floor and my hair, and even trying to eat my hair, and then kind of collapsing. And I didn't know that it was stomach bloat, but we raced to the emergency hospital, and his stomach was in the process of flipping, as the vet explained it to me. And so I spent the night there as they performed a surgery on him and were able to correct it. And then it
Mm-hmm.
went through a long healing process. But yes, that was another scare. And I already knew that I loved Brady so much. I was
Mm-hmm.
just sitting there meditating all night, um,
Sure.
waiting for him to come out of this surgery. And so that, yes,
Mm-hmm.
that was another very um, frightening experience for me. And then to actually lose him, because the property boundary with his invisible fence changed, because I had an ice storm that knocked down an old shed. And so
Ah.
it left this hole, and where the
Oh,
invisible
okay.
fence was, and he usually stayed right next to me. Um,
Sure.
and somehow he sniffed something and wandered off, and then all of a sudden he wasn't there.
Mm.
Right.
It took hours. I mobilized the whole neighborhood. People were out looking for him. And I knew I was going to stay out, even if it was
Mm-hmm.
all night long, even if it took more than a day. I was not going to go to bed until I found him. And
Mm-hmm.
so fortunately, we were graced with this wonderful neighbor who found him. He was safe at another neighbor's house. A boy had found him on the road and put him in the
Mm-hmm.
car and drove him to the fire station. And then these people walking by said, well, we'll take him. And nobody called. His vet's number was on his tag. I then took different measures, and I do encourage
Mm-hmm.
everyone to have their phone number on their dog's collar, which
Mm-hmm.
my dog now has.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but 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 we found him, and
Yeah.
so it was a very joyful reunion.
That leads me to something else that I liked about your book, and something you brought home more than once in more than one situation, and that was the importance of community,
Mm.
between your father and your neighbors and everybody just coming together on multiple occasions. It brought that home as a big theme for me.
I'm glad that you brought that up, Jim, because that the community aspect of loving an animal, loving
Hmm.
anyone, I think is very important, and that we all do need help in this world, and it's things can get complicated, and I
Hmm.
think that I also I also like the word community, because I in Soulmate Dog, it was important for me to share tips for
Hmm.
my readers that I thought would be helpful to everyone at large. Even
Sure.
one example for that is I think the importance of having pet insurance. And
Mhm.
Definitely.
and if Brady had had pet insurance, wow, I would have had a different financial situation
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
far. And
Yeah.
now I do have pet insurance, and with my father, I did a lot of research to find um, a good one, and
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
and so it's important to do that. But I just think that we love our animal companions so much, and we all have health insurance. At least I hope we do. Um, so I just think that to cover the what if when
Yeah.
something goes so terribly wrong, it's just I wanted to share things like that with my readers
Right.
that people might not think of when they welcome a new animal into their lives.
Right. Well, as we're going to find out, you and Brady went through some things that no one would have even thought about having to confront in life. Um, One of the most important thing for me about this book, the biggest theme, is just that you can develop telepathy between
Mhm.
yourself and other animals. Now, Melanie and I have had a pet communicator as a guest on our show before.
Mhm.
And so we started to grasp the concept, but then entered Debbie McGilvery, who is, from everything I've read about her, she's amazing animal. I hesitate to use the word psychic, but we're going to go ahead and use that to keep things simple.
And I'm
Although
I'm
there's a
gonna
lot
be
more
honest.
to it than that.
We foster animals as well, and
Yeah.
we had a foster dog that I just could not get. So I had a very similar experience to you with my golden. She was my best and dearest friend. She was a once in a lifetime dog, and we have a dog now who I adore, and she's great. But Abby was, this is Abby actually. She was part of the show for the longest time. She was a once in a lifetime dog, and there was a special understanding there, and we could well, I taught her sign language as well, so later on when she went deaf, that actually worked out. But we had this thing where we could just make eye contact and we would know. And um, after she passed, a neighbor had abandoned their dog, and we didn't know what to do. We weren't in a situation where we could keep it, so we fostered it and tried to find her a home. And I did the best I could. Now I do train dogs, and very successfully. But this dog, there was just something, I just could not figure her out. And so a friend of ours talked about this pet psychic, and I'm really skeptical. I don't believe in the frou-frou, that kind of stuff. And she just kept at it and kept at it. And finally she said, I'll tell you what, I'll gift you a session. You've got to talk to her. And it was a surreal experience. And the information we got from her really helped me deal with this dog. We found out she had the doggy equivalent of being on the autism spectrum.
Wow.
Well, I tutor autistic kids. I know how to handle that. And once I understood what was going on, we started our systems and our routines, and then she kind of flourished at that point. And right down to changing her name. She acted like her name was a swear word. She wouldn't come to her name. And this lady said, well, it's because the person who had her before didn't treat her good, and that name's associated with that. She needs a more powerful name. She needs a name that she's proud of. So we named her after a Greek goddess, I think it was.
Oh,
and just she blossomed. And that just made it so much easier to place her, because I don't think we would have been able to. People would have just thought she was dumb. And she wasn't dumb, but boy, was she frustrating. But that was surreal.
I
Yeah.
understand. I was also very skeptical, and I understand. I think that animal telepathy, animal communication can absolutely transform an animal's relationship with humans, and
Yes.
vice versa. And if we can reach a deeper level of understanding of one another, then we can really have a meaningful relationship and alleviate frustrations, for example.
Yeah.
Right.
Frustrations, medical issues, all manner of things.
Yeah, and that was the most surreal thing about that. And I do want you to elaborate about the phone thing, because that was the thing that I was like,
And
over
yeah,
the
it's the
phone,
same as with you.
really?
You didn't meet her in person,
Yeah.
but she was totally accurate and perceptive.
Right. And the first thing
that's
this one
that's a
said,
gift. It's amazing.
the first one this one said was, I had always fed Abby lamb and pumpkin. And she said, no, you can't feed her lamb. You can't feed her chicken, and you can't feed her lamb. I changed her diet, different dog. And how would you know that over the phone?
Well, it has nothing to do with the phone. That telepathy doesn't need a phone or a Skype or anything like that, because it's an energetic transmission. So it's, if it's thought to thought, then it doesn't need all of that. It's only us. We don't have that capacity like the animals have. So we need these tools. So maybe it seemed a little primitive to Brady, this Skype business.
Yeah.
But
you said he did not like communicating via Skype. You mentioned that.
No, he didn't like it at all. I was in Turkey, and my father thought it would be an excellent idea for Brady to be able to see me. And when he realized that it was fake and I wasn't really there, and he could see my voice, but he couldn't touch me, he was very disturbed by that. So really flummoxed him. And then Dad was like, this is too upsetting for Brady. We cannot Skype again with him. And I was like,
Aw.
fine, that's fine. So,
Yeah,
Debbie taught me to send a mental postcard to Brady. So I would try to send him images and love, and that was my form of communicating with him if I was away, rather than doing Skype.
well, and this goes all the way back to the beginning with the training. He was sending you something because you came early. You felt, you knew, you didn't even know that you knew, you just did. And he had already established that connection. You just didn't recognize it for what it was. So being graced with that realization later probably just strengthened that bond so much more. And like I said, I'm still a little on the skeptical frou-frou side, but having experienced it firsthand, and it's not like it's this huge, expensive endeavor like we do with humans. I mean, we set them up for thousands of dollars an hour for years and years and years, and sometimes make progress and sometimes don't. This situation was, she keyed into this dog within minutes and made life-changing discoveries. And I was blown away, and I'm not that easily persuaded. So how did you even find out about her?
It was just through an acquaintance who had told me that she had worked with her extensively. Of course, being the skeptic academic that I am, I rejected it immediately.
Yeah.
But I was so curious, and eager to know Brady on a more profound level, that I thought it's okay to be skeptical, but you can at least try it and then decide. And a true academic skeptic wouldn't just outright reject something. So there's the whole Hegelian process of the
Sigh, yes.
right, antithesis, and reaching a dialectic. And so in that regard, when I had the initial conversation with Debbie, as I do write in the book, it was immediately clear that she was speaking with Brady. It was his tone, it was his energy, even the things, he was bored with some of my questions because I was trying to tell her things that I'd already communicated to him. I wouldn't have used the word telepathically at the time, but I would tell him, okay, so we're going to Vermont to see your grandparents. And so I told that to Debbie. I said, well, you could tell him that soon we're going to Vermont. He loved going to Vermont. And he said, well, this is kind of boring because Michelle is saying things that she's already told me. So let's talk about something more interesting.
Oh, wow.
For instance. And that was just so Brady. So it was, what really clinched it for me in that initial conversation was that Debbie also conducted body scans with the dog she communicated with, and that he indicated that his lower lumbar, and they were very precise about which part of the lumbar it was, I think L4 or something. And she encouraged me to take him to see an animal chiropractor. So I was able to do that afternoon. And of course, I didn't mention that I had talked to an animal communicator. So I went in, and she scanned him right away in his spine. And she said, oh, his lower lumbar, I think it was L4, was out. And I just was staring at her. And I thought, okay, yes, I knew that it was legit, but that really confirmed it. And then the rest of Brady's life, things got very deep and very intense. And we talked to Debbie a lot, and she was really instrumental in Brady's medical journey from that point on. And I would even say, in this profound, almost psychological, spiritual journey that Brady and I were on together. So that's complicated for our interview, but I hope that our readers will be interested in learning about that, and then maybe seeing how they could be on their own journey with their animals.
Well, I will say on the side that Debbie has her own website, and she does offer her services um, by email, by phone, personal appointments.
We should
so
bring her on the show, frankly.
Yeah,
I'd like to
maybe
pick
we
her
should
brain a
have her on
little
the
bit.
show. That'd
Oh,
be
I
really
wish
cool.
that she would. She is absolutely remarkable, and she's very approachable. She's very down to earth. I do write about in Soulmate Dog that I did her training, and that I felt like I could speak the language of dog on a sort of
Mhm.
intermediate level. And I think every
Right.
dog is different. Brady
Oh, yes.
loved to talk. My current dog, Genji, he's more of an observer. He's not
Mhm.
very
Mhm.
chatty. So I think that, the level that each dog is going to communicate to is, or animal, any animal, is
Mhm.
going to be different. But
Mhm.
but Debbie, if I was on the intermediate level, she was, the master level. And she
Mhm.
keeps saying too that it's like working out. You just build this muscle the more that you keep communicating. And
Mhm.
so she's very accessible, and she just helps so many people and animals. I love her work. I love what she does. I really do hope that you would have her on your show. I think she would be great.
We'll
Yeah,
give
well,
it a
look
shot.
into that. We'll
Yeah,
look into that.
one more thing, and then we'll move back onto your book. I really appreciate that you and her talked about how it's something you can learn, and
Yes.
that from me took it from the foo-foo, I was born with this talent, I see dead people realm, into the
No.
no, this is a skill, this is a talent, you can teach it, you can learn it. That once it became tangible, oh, okay, I'm a little bit more on board now. I'm not so talking to the Jamaican lady on the phone, getting my tea leaves read. Now it's an actual skill. Yeah.
Yes, I
All the
completely agree
cliches.
with you.
All the
Yeah.
cliches.
All right. So moving on with the story of you and Brady.
So
Jim has all the questions.
Yeah. You did point out something very interesting that I didn't give a whole lot of thought to before we move on.
Excuse me,
with
we're in the
Brady.
middle of Texas. I'm going to kill a scorpion. I'll be right back.
While she's doing that,
It's literally crawling on my leg.
yipe.
Yeah.
Humans have 70,000 thoughts going through their head every day. So meditation is a good way to filter and calm yourself. And this is something you used a lot in your journey with Brady, as well as just in your everyday life.
Yes. Yes. And I do think that meditation is helpful in learning the tools of animal communication, because you really need to quiet your mind to be able to tune into the radio station of your animal, the frequency
Right.
that your animal is communicating on. And I
Right.
think that, always being distracted with our phones is a way to take us out of that realm and farther away from that further away from that possibility. So I think that meditating helps to quiet the mind and allows you to be able to tune in and listen when your animal is speaking. I think that's a very important part.
It does help to calm the inner critic and the inner cynic and all of that as well. It's
Well, you know what's funny is I can't believe I just did all that without screaming. There was literally a scorpion crawling up my leg.
And somehow it seemed normal to me too that you were out killing a scorpion.
Yeah, I didn't.
There's a scorpion crawling up my leg.
Yeah, don't mind me. Anyways, cats are really, really good at that. When you can just have that moment where you just kind of do that blinking thing, and that calms me. With dogs, there are tactics that you can use with dogs that I have literally used on my husband. And, just when you look them in the eyes and you rub their ears and you get them to calm down, I've literally done that with my husband and it works. Some of the meditation techniques that if you are with your dog at the time, and I love seeing those videos of dogs doing yoga with their with their parents, and they always cute and funny, but it just seems so natural for a dog to do that and to mimic that and to want to share in that experience, and it is like a shared meditation. So good practice, because people resort to drugs so much, and I think social media has become a drug as well.
Mhm.
And we need to, I mean, the joke online is go touch grass, but it's so true.
Yeah, actually, I found that in the when I would meditate, it would also Brady would give out this sigh, and he would just go into that realm with me too.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
Mhm.
and it really helps to quiet the mind to be able to hear each other.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that was an important part of it for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you go on vacation with Brady. It's just you're having a good time splashing around in the water, and then a life-changing event happens for our young friend, and this is where things take a turn because this turned into a long hospital stay, really expensive treatment. Would you mind talking about that for just a bit and filling in our listeners with what went down?
Yes, I would. I will try to keep it brief so that they can
Sure.
read the book and
Of
experience
course.
it for themselves.
Of
But
course.
yes, Brady, who is a very healthy dog, contracted leptospirosis, and it came on very suddenly, in a very frightening way. And yes, he experienced kidney failure and needed to
Mm.
stay in the emergency hospital to undergo around the clock treatments.
Mm,
And so
mm,
for me, this was the initial reason why I wanted to write the book, because
mhm,
I believed in his recovery. He believed in his recovery. Debbie McGillivray was very supportive. We had a team of emergency veterinary surgeons, as well as our holistic vets and my family and friends. If you want to talk about community,
mhm,
I went to everybody. I was not afraid to ask for help from anyone, if they would meditate, if they would, whatever it
mhm,
was. And so when Brady did have his miraculous recovery, the reason I was so interested in writing Soulmate Dog was that several vets had said to me, Brady's a miracle dog, and you need to write about
mm,
this. People need to know that they can save their dogs, that
mm.
kidney failure is not a death sentence.
Right.
And and so that was a driving factor, because I like to be able to help people. I like to be able to offer something that's concrete
Mm,
and tangible. And I felt like that could help a lot of people to save their animals.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think this book would help a lot of people. I hope we can get the word out for you because it is an amazing journey you've taken. We've only scraped the surface, but once again, community comes into play after he was released. Team Brady, as we call them, helped while you went on vacation. They took care of the dog while you were away, and um, that part of the story just moves me because it's so hard to find community these days. You
Mhm.
can live somewhere for years and years and not even know your neighbor's first name anymore.
It's so true. It's so true. And so here in Switzerland, we have this little community where my dog runs free, and
Hmm.
he goes to visit different people. And I've gotten to know people because they say, "Oh, your dog has come to see me," and they're walking by, and
Hmm.
or other neighbors who will just put out a water bowl for him, and then we. So I feel like there's a way that our animals can bring the humans together too,
Hmm.
because they're friendly and outgoing, and there's so many different ways that can be done. But yeah, I do feel like we are lacking community,
Hmm.
and it's harder to find it. And I think that our animal friends also encourage that. I think
Hmm.
animals do bring out the best in the humans, I think.
I think
Absolutely.
you're absolutely right.
There's-
I don't understand the mentality of people who refuse to have pets or think they're, they're awful or whatever, because I do know people who are like that. I don't quite get it.
And I don't like to judge people on first
No.
impressions, but there is an inherent distrust that instantly arises when somebody says, "Oh, I don't like entire species of animal." It's like,
because a dog bit them when they were in
but
third
yeah,
grade.
okay, that was a
happened to me. I
Chihuahua. That
still
doesn't
love
mean a
dogs.
golden. Yeah,
But yeah,
and imagine if we were that bigoted towards humans. I mean, that isn't just a race. That is an entire species. I mean, that's insane.
That's true.
You know, and but what can you do? And you can't say that to their face, although I'd like to. I want to divert a little bit into your writing process. And I mean, you have a PhD in literature, for crying out loud. And I just want folks to understand that if you pick up this book, you're going to get kind of a lyrical treat. And I just want to read, since we're on this area, and I know it's a little bit painful, but just the way you wrote this, you are literally in the book and you just want to continue reading. So I just want to give a tiny, tiny little taste for our readers so that it's not just about the story and the journey, which is fantastic, but it's also the actual writing style, which only you could do. This, because I wrote a book kind of about my dog too, but it was more of a networking book. It's called Nose to Nose Networking, and it takes the canine experience, it translates it into human so that people can use it. And I've been thinking ever since the pandemic of doing a second version of that for just how to make friends, because I don't think people know how to do it anymore. And dogs do it so easily. So I want to read this just a tiny little bit here, talking about how this started and going from, it's from your chapter, from a 5-star vacation to a 5-star hospital, and how you opened this chapter. When Brady collapsed into a lethargic heap of feverish black and cinnamon fur, looking nothing like the vicious German Shepherd I knew so well. I'm sorry, vicious. Vivacious.
Vivacious.
That's vivacious. Why did I say vicious? Vivacious, not vicious. Okay. I raced him to the emergency veterinary hospital in Norwalk, Connecticut, trying to reach the speed of light. The late summer sun bore down on us that Sunday afternoon as I carried him to the backseat of my car. As we took off swiftly, words I had written in my journal earlier that summer haunted my fraught mind. My greatest fear is losing Brady. It's almost like you knew it was happening. And then later on in the chapter, I think the exact words were, "Me shall go, puppy, stay." And that you just had to get yourself, when they told you that you couldn't stay, I know that feeling. And
That
you
had to
had
be
to just
just
go all the way
wrecking.
down to baby talk yourself to get yourself out of that situation. And it just was such a wonderful contrast going from just the beautiful metaphors and the way that, you brought us into the book down to "Me shall go, puppy, stay," and then having to say that to get yourself out of the room. So tell us a little bit about this writing process. First of all, how long did it take? And was it like a cathartic experience? Did you cry a lot?
It's interesting. You just read that and I started to cry.
I'm so sorry. I knew.
Don't be sorry.
It hit me.
Don't
It
be
just hit
sorry.
all
There
the
are
Yeah,
parts
feels.
of
All the
Soulmate
feels.
Dog.
beautiful writing.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. There are parts of Soulmate Dog that do still make me cry, to make me laugh too. But yes. So the writing. Thank you for acknowledging my writing. It is my deep passion to express the primordial thought or description that I want to convey. And I don't know how to explain that. I frequently feel like there's a muse with me, and I've loved words my entire life. I loved learning to read when I was a child. I love to play with words. I love it when I can play with words and put them together in a way that's really conveying the core of what I would want to express. And so they sometimes they just come to me, and I'm so delighted that they've come and that they work well in the context. And it took me a very long time to write Soulmate Dog because I was sick with Lyme disease for a lot of the time that I was trying to write Soulmate Dog. And then I had this miraculous recovery myself. So it's sort of ironic that I have written 2 medical memoirs, and one is about my recovery from Lyme disease, starving to heal in Siberia, and my radical recovery from late-stage Lyme disease. And so everything that I wrote while I was sick with Lyme disease, when I recovered and I went back to read my manuscript, I was like, there were just, it wasn't me. It was sick me writing it. And so
Right.
there were things that just didn't work because I had this intense brain fog for so long. And so I then went through the process of going through it again, and then things came together beautifully. But all in, I would say that this book took me about 10 years from the time I started writing it to the time that it came out in June, Soulmate
So
Dog.
truly a labor of love.
Yeah,
A
definitely.
labor of love. If I had been well, it wouldn't have taken so long.
Sure.
So from the time that I recovered from Lyme disease myself, and then went into the writing full time, then it went very smoothly. Although I did also work with my editor, who made some suggestions about the sequence and adding in the grief portion that we touched on in the beginning of our time together. My editor felt that it was important to discuss my early experiences with grief so that the reader would understand my particular relationship with it. And that was a very difficult part to write about.
Undoubtedly.
But again, I felt that it also would enhance the reader's experience, and I felt that I had something to offer about how to process grief. And so there were times when I was writing the parts on grief in Soulmate Dog, and I was close to the ocean, which never happens to me. I was just close to the ocean at that time, and it was cold. And I would be writing, and then I emotionally couldn't take it anymore. And I would run to the ocean. I would just go swimming.
No.
Just shake it off.
Cleanse.
Yeah.
Cleanse.
A pellet cleanse, basically. Yeah.
So it was very powerful. So when I get into the book, it's like I'm living inside of it, and it does get intense, but I felt that the book deserved it and the reader deserved it. And I felt like I had something to contribute in regards to grief in that way. And so I put aside how intense it was for me to write about it so that I would be able to make that contribution.
Well, it made it real.
Yeah, and this is the type of book that I would recommend gifting to someone who is going through that. And a quick question. Do you think that the fever writing, the fog brain writing, do you think there were parts that you got out of that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise? I know a lot of it probably didn't make sense, but was there some things in there that you're like, oh, I probably wouldn't have written that had I been well? I probably wouldn't have thought of that.
I wouldn't say that necessarily, but I would say that all was not lost. I was absolutely able to salvage a lot of things. And so I wouldn't say that it was a completely lost effort. I would say that I'm such an optimist. I'm always looking for the optimistic angle there. And on that one, I
just pointed at me.
I would love to be able to say that, but I can't.
Okay. I call that sitting in your splat, when you just go splat and you're sitting there going, your choice is to sit there and, whine and cry and why me, or to get up and, get out of your splat. And so You were in a splat, but you were still. Do you think the writing helped you get well? On top of all the other things, the meditation and all the things.
I do not think that the writing helped me get well. I think the very specific protocol that I
Okay.
embarked on, which is also pretty far out there in Siberia, that's what got me well.
Like literally in Siberia. We're not being metaphoric.
Literally in Siberia.
Literally
Yes.
in Siberia.
Yes, and it saved my life. And then, I didn't think that you could overcome brain fog and get your memory back. And then boom, I recovered, and I wrote 4 books. And
Yeah,
so
I do want to read
Fantastic.
that book
Yeah,
because
me
that
too.
I came on fire. But I think that something that helped me survive being ill was that I kept trying to write. I kept trying to live my passions and make a contribution, because I feel like I can't live without making a contribution to other people, other animals. And so I kept trying. I never gave up.
yeah, and a weaker person would have. In fact, they might have even used that as an excuse to carry on with their give upness, as we can coin. You really persisted. You really
Yeah.
persisted, and Brady had that same spirit. He had that same persistence. I think that's why you guys spoke to each other so well.
Yes, he did. He was a fighter. I was a fighter. We also loved each other so deeply that we were both fighting to also still be with each other. I believe that so deeply. And I think that the animal communication is helpful in that regard too. So if people are interested to just enhance the deep love that they already have with their animals, it is absolutely life-changing to be able to have that deeper level of expression and help one another. So it did help us. But yes, he was a fighter, and I was going to fight for him.
And you did.
I did.
He lived for quite a good long time after the recovery too, so that's a blessing.
Yes, it is a blessing. And German Shepherds, the larger dogs, just don't live as long as some of
Right.
the other dogs. So I'm grateful for the rest of my life that we had the time that we did, and it was so high quality. I don't usually get teary-eyed.
I'm sorry.
We didn't mean to go all Barbara Walters on you.
It spoke to me. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
No,
I'm not sorry.
and I have said that Soulmate Dog will always be the most meaningful book that I will ever write. So it is very close to my heart, and I'm delighted that I was able to share it. And of course it's going to produce emotions in me, because they're important topics for me to share.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I guess we'll just bring it back after you had another 3 years with Brady and all that went down, and he moved on. You
The
continued.
the book doesn't end with his passing,
Yeah.
which is a nice change.
I appreciate that, and the dog died the end. But you literally took it one step further.
Yeah, you went on something I would never have done even when I was younger. It's up to you how much you want to share about it, but you went on a hike.
I think that's an understatement.
Miraculous in itself, because it was I was not a well person. I have lifelong mountaineering skills. I used to be a mountaineering guide, and the way I process grief for me is I walk it off. I have to walk and think and process, and that helps me tremendously. And again, grief is such an important aspect of love, and I did not want to leave my reader there, as I have myself struggled with so many books about a beloved animal, and then it ends, and then you're left grieving. And I wanted to walk the reader through my messy process of grief that was in some very raw writing, and I shared journal entries, and I somehow found this adrenaline to go on this journey to Patagonia with my backpack and stay in my tent and bring, a journal and just really I needed an expansive space to really
Sure.
contemplate the profound experiences, love, loss that I shared with Brady, and it was a very important part of my journey, and I think it was even an important part of me writing Soulmate Dog. It added such a rich element, and it deepened my thought process on it, and I kept continuing to communicate telepathically with Brady in spirit after he
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, if you still had that connection, because I feel like that would just never be broken.
Absolutely, yes, and even and I do share this in I name it a coda of Soulmate Dog, that I was just looking out at the expanse of Patagonia one day, and those mountains that continued to be so stunning in my mind. And I really distinctly heard him say that this trip was for me, that I deserved doing something beautiful after everything that I did for him. And I would not come up with that on my own. I don't think like that. So it was endearing to hear his thought just come to me like that. But yes, I that is another aspect that is important to me, is being able to process grief for your animal companion who you love so much.
Yeah. Yes.
Wow. So I think we could talk to you for another 2 hours, but I'm not going to do that to you. Let's go ahead and wrap this up by, first of all, get the book. All the links will be on our website. Remind people where they can find you. And what are you doing on Instagram and TikTok these days? What kind of things can they find there?
Well, I do share animal related posts. I share about my books and different quotes from my books. Also, so I like to also share quotes about writing, or my own thoughts about writing, or a little bit of my life. I'm out hiking in Switzerland frequently with my dog, and so sometimes I'll just share, mountain pictures out with my dog. I'm very healthy now that I have recovered from Lyme disease.
You look amazing.
Yeah. Thank you. And I'm, I'm still writing. I have another book coming out in March, The Lunatic, a novel that actually features a dog who has this intuitive sense of being able to communicate with its humans. So I'll be sharing on Instagram and TikTok a little bit more about that. I'm in the process of writing another novel right now, so I don't like to share too much of what I'm in the process of writing, but I'll, something a little here and there.
Well, when that's ready, send it forward. We will shamelessly plug that one and have you back on for sure.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. This was quite the ride. It's not. I'm not going to say it's an easy read. It's not easy. It's enjoyable.
It is rewarding.
You do. Yeah, it is rewarding. You learn a lot about communication and a lot about yourself. So I would call it more of a journey, and encourage folks to just get a nice quiet place, cup of tea, and buckle up. Well, Michelle, it's been a complete joy. Jim, do you have any last words?
Just absolute pleasure talking to you, and I like your book. I look forward to reading more of your work.
Thank you so much for having me and being so generous. I really enjoyed your questions, our conversation, and I'm grateful to be on your show.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Well, you've been a delight. So we look forward to having you back again. Is there anything else you would like our listeners to know before we release you into the beautiful mountains that are?
I don't. I just I hope that they will consider reading Soulmate Dog and being open to the beauty that can be enhanced between humans and animals. The beautiful relationship.
Just go look your dog or your cat in the eyes and think about what we said here today and then read our book. All right. You have an amazing, amazing day. And thanks again for being on our show.
Take care.
Thank you. You too.